Welcome to Dr. M Wadcast, a wadcast with a mission, connecting continuous improvement professionals across the world.
Hey.
Here you go. I have a timer with me, so can you see the timer?
Yeah, I see it.
Yep.
Okay, so let's share. Can you see?
Yeah. Your screen's there.
Okay. One thing good about we in India is we have to just say namaste. Namaste is time neutral.
Absolutely.
Namaste is for welcoming the guests, and namaste is when we say see you again. So namaste to all of you, and namaste Balaji for being with us today and talking to us about the role of competition in the environment of collaboration and cooperation the Deming way. And you will talk to us, your association with Deming and Henry Neave, but I had to do my standard work. So I'm dedicating the entire Dr. M's launch to my sensei, late sensei Masaki Humai. He passed on last year. And going forward, this is the third episode on Dr. M's Lounge. Why I called it that, I wouldn't know myself, but it just occurred to me, so I called it. And Balaji, sir, is the founder of Deming Forum of India. He'll tell you the story why he named it and the history behind it. He's the founder and he's the advisory council member for the W. Edwards Deming Institute. And how I got in touch with Balaji sir is that I'm doing this 12 days to Deming, and I registered for the course, and I found out that the gentleman, the mentor to me, was from Canada, and he said, Dr. M, you're crazy. I said, why? He said, first of all, you're taking the course, and many of them are not able to complete 12 days to Deming. They get stuck. And the second thing is, I'm in Canada, and you're going to be awake early in the morning. So I said, no. I said, look, there's a gentleman called Balaji Reddie who is in Pune. I said, Pune is just 3.5 hours drive from here. He said, you don't have to drive, just get in touch with him and do the course. So I started the course about 2 years ago, and I'm on day 7, and I've not been able to progress, but I'm sure I'll complete it. He's the honorary member of Deming's Alliance, which is based in UK, and a professor in operations in Pune. And well, that's his mentor. Professor Henry Neave. I'm sure Balaji sir will talk about Henry Neave and his influence on Balaji. So that's one that's his book called Deming Dimension.
So, no, that's 12 days to Deming. That's the 12 days to Deming print edition.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So okay, where I skipped off is this, that you said with my guru Henry Neave. What can I say? He wrote over here. What can I say about him? His wonderful book, The Deming Dimension, to my mind, is the best introduction to Deming philosophy. And this is what I got from Deming Institute. And so how we have structured this episode will be that I'm handing it over to Mr. Balaji, and he will talk to us about this. And what I call the chapter. The second chapter is we got a lot of questions from United States, Netherlands, and Australia. So I'll take him for a flight for the written questions from US to Netherlands to Australia, and then I'll throw it open to the members or the invitees who are there, so you can interact with him. So I'm going to stop sharing and passing it on to Balaji, sir. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. M. And good to see all of you here. It's wonderful. I think I'm addressing a large audience after a very, very long time. So, I mean, online. I normally address my students in the classroom, and that's when they're sitting in front of me, which is much easier to do because I'm studying their faces and I can always respond to whatever they are, what I can see the questions on their faces. Now, coming to why we chose this title, well, I believe that the cornerstone of Dr. Deming's compelling approach and philosophy, the foundation lay in this sentence. Um, when he was rediscovered in America, and everyone when they suddenly realized that he was a person, I mean, one of the people who really was responsible for turning the Japanese industry around. I think he suddenly caught unawares. He had all of this knowledge inside of him, and the people who made that video of Japan can, why can't we? Also, I believe they did their research, but not that much to that much of a depth. But anyway, he just answered their questions. He had no idea what they were putting together, and people who saw that video came to the conclusion, of what Deming was saying, that it was statistics that turned everything around. And for the longest time, if you read some of the papers that he wrote just after, I think he was just being true to his profession when he was saying that yes, statistics is the cornerstone of everything. But when he started taking his lectures again in United States, he started more or less repeating what he did in Japan, but he saw that he was making no headway. And he was beginning to get, I believe, a little puzzled. And I got this hint over there, in Mary Walton's book, the book that she wrote, that where in the preface, if you read there, and I think in the middle of the chapter somewhere, she writes about this. She said, I asked him that, you've got we don't know how long you're going to live and things like that. Haven't you ever thought of setting up an organization in your name, or some kind of an institute? And he said, no, I'm okay. Unicorporated, just one man. And he just said, I'm okay. I believe he was getting puzzled as to what exactly the Japanese learned from it. Statistics was what they asked him to teach them. And he did that. And boy, did he do a great job. But there were many other things he was talking. Now, the thing that we know of is that he gave his lectures from 1950 onwards. But if you read properly, he started giving unofficial lectures in his hotel room from 1948, 49 onwards. And then he was invited officially to give his set of structured lectures, which he gave later, which was converted into that little booklet, etc. And then he started repeating and saying a few things. Now, the Japanese, of course, but the statistics bit was there, but there was something else that I believe that he kept repeating. And I found hints of these. In John Dowd, he had made a note of the lecture that he gave to top management. Now, there were two major lectures he gave to top management. One was in July of 1950, and that was at the Industrial Center in Tokyo. That was not very well attended. I think 40 odd people were invited, but just 21, 22 people turned up. But the feedback that they gave to the rest of the industrialists who missed that lecture. So there was yet another lecture that was organized almost 20 days later. That was close to August. And this time, this was at Mount Hakone, where there were 80 people sitting in the room. And that is where I think, things started picking up. But what he spoke to those 20 executives, I believe John Dowd, when he was writing that, because there was no sort of documented, part of that lecture available anywhere. So he sat down. I think he went to Japan. He went and met some of the people who were part of that lecture. And meanwhile, I discovered that my father was in Japan in the 1960s, and I found some notes, very, very old. And there were some hints of what he was being taught, because he worked in a Deming Prize when he was there. My father was there in 1964, and Showa Electric won the Deming Prize in 1965. So there were some notes there I found which were very interesting. And there they were talking about a system. And Deming apparently used the same words there in the lecture that he gave in Japan, that this is just a small system of a bigger system that we need to organize. And he says, as a system, it's never been tried. And he said, because this is something new, you can't go at it alone. So use the Deming Prize as a platform to cooperate with each other. So Japan should see itself as a system. So I believe two parts of what he later on came to call as profound knowledge, he was already talking there, and that was systems, the cooperation bit, which is the backbone. And well, cooperation would not happen without understanding people. So the understanding people basically said it, but he definitely meant it. And so I think that till 1987, he was reacting to what was happening in America because they were asking him for a method, and he never gave a method. You have to just come up with your own method, right? He said, I'm giving you certain principles, and you just do your own thing. That, and so when he wrote Quality, Productivity, and Competitive Position, and then which was rechristened as Out of the Crisis, I think that was more of a publisher's gimmick to get people going. Of course, in the preface, he did write that there was a crisis in Japan, and there is a crisis here. We're not seeing it. He says, "Does a duck know it's raining?" And when the sun sets and the cat is just as helpless in the dark as everybody else, it can see maybe better than someone else. So the crisis is there, but we don't see it. And so coming back, yeah. So when he wrote about that, Out of the Crisis, that was 1986. Now, 87, he was diagnosed with cancer, and I think he underwent a lot of blood transfusions in and out of hospitals. He was doing the odd lectures. 88, I remember Henry Neave speaking to me, telling me what happened in I think around April or May of 1980. I have these weekend sessions with him. And one weekend when he arrived at the venue, he said he was ashen. I mean, he was scared that he's going to just kick the bucket, and then they said, are you okay? Should we take you to a hospital? And he said, I'm just cancel that and let him go back to the hotel to take some rest. So he was undergoing all these. I think he was going in and out. He got a lot of time to himself. And I think that's where he finally put it all together. That it was not just statistics, what he later on christened as profound knowledge. And that is knowledge of the system, knowledge of people. What he said is variation, which is more than just statistics. And well, the most important of them all, if you want to ask me the theory bit, why do these things? Why do things happen the way they do? Well, the rest, as they say, he tried to bring it out. I think that was 1989, and he had only just 4 years after that. This is in his philosophy. This is his way of thinking. And I think finally he founded that institute just 1 month before he died. So I think he finally felt he hit the so-called jackpot. He got it all together and finally put together what exactly the Japanese learned from him, because he was speaking a lot to them, but they picked up these 4 major things from him. About people. Now, in systems, one of the main things he said is, because when he spoke about cooperation, you need to cooperate, right? And that's where Henry Neave, now, if you see the 12 Days to Deming, and that's why I was reminding Dr. M. Mohan about this, he's completed day 7, because day 8 onwards comes in what he calls as the, and that is where in the new climate, he talks about 3 things: cooperation, all right, joy in work, right? And that's what he says, that, and he says here that people should enjoy their work, right? So the cooperation, the backbone of the entire philosophy that came out. Now, that's why I decided to call it that, because I say that's the backbone of what he was trying to say here, right? Now, the 2 words that came were cooperation and collaboration. Now, why did we use these 2 words? What's the difference? Well, I've been seeing on LinkedIn some people putting up some kind of pictures over there, or some difference in comparison of cooperation, collaboration. Very simply, for me, cooperation is more on the informal side. Collaboration is more of a formal kind of a thing that you put together. But both of them have the same meaning. When you say, will you cooperate with me? Yes. But will you collaborate? Then it becomes very, very structured and formal, and maybe putting it down on paper or something like that. All right. But then, was he against competition? Well, he said competition will always exist, but it depends on how you look at it. And there are different kinds of competition. And if you're looking at, a sport, like when you're playing a game, like football or tennis, right? And he says it in the video called The Deming of America. He says that we knew from the beginning that there's going to be only one winner. And he said, there's nothing wrong with that. All right. So, absolutely fine. That's the way it is. But he said, if you're looking at that kind of thinking being brought in to business and education, sorry, there can be different kinds of winners and different types of winners. And he said that that's where I say that you can't have that kind of competition over here. All right. And he was saying that competition will exist, but it'll exist of you versus you yourself. So you compete with, you don't compete against anybody else. Now, that took me a long time to figure out. I remember I started reading the New Economics 1997. And by the time I understood the competing with and competing against, it was like an aha moment. That I remember Hazel Cannon telling me this, that the thing about Deming is you have an aha moment, and that's what happened to me. My aha moment happened then when I said, okay, he did say competition, because he always great. It's good to have a good competitor, in business, right? But you don't try to copy the competitor. You try to understand why and how that person is doing things, and not what exactly that person. You don't copy, right? So that kind of competition, right? We always have this tendency, and that's why he says understanding psychology and of his philosophy. He brought that in. So the systems, the people, variation, theory. Why do they behave the way they do? And that's why he said that competition inside a company, he wanted to just take it out. He said he was against performance appraisal. People talk about performance management. Of course, you have to manage people's performances, but he says appraisal is out. What do you do in an appraisal? You compare. All right. And that is where everything goes out the window. And he says that kind of competition is destructive. Do not compare. I mean, in case of this system, all right, we're having this great lecture of ours, right? This session of ours. And what's the system here? Well, it's me, the speaker, you, the listeners. You have Dr. M, who's organized all of this. You have this platform on which we are interacting. You have a huge system. I mean, today, Dr. M is somewhere else, but he's got something moving, and everything is being conducted using this system. If you remove even one part of the system, the whole system collapses, right? That's the interdependencies. Now, here, if we're all here to learn from one another, and so there is no competition. But suppose someone asks this silly question somewhere through and talk to them. I don't mean it. Making that statement, who's a better speaker, Balaji, Reddie, or Dr. M? Well, you killed the system. I mean, I can never do what Dr. M is doing, right? The way he's organized, and at this way, I am still a student, right? And I am still learning, and we need to be together. We want to learn from one another. You don't compare. You just learn from one another, right? You've broken the back of learning. You've broken the back of this entire system if you make. So that's the appraisal bit, which where each one of us is different, right? So when people talk about that competition inside a company, they try the same thing that happens in sport, trying to bring it in. Incidentally, about the sport thing, I don't know where I read this, but this is quite interesting. Why the Olympic Games were established centuries ago was because the Romans, the people who were travelers, they came back and said there's so many different cultures throughout the world, and we want to know how cultures have developed, how cultures are. I mean, what do they do about different kinds of sport and games, and how do they grow? Are they all the same? Are we all the same? There are a lot of things which are common, but some which are recognized. Bring everyone together and learn from each other and each other's cultures. Somewhere down the line, it became a competition, and that was that. So I believe that kind of competition, I think I'm making myself very clear, inside a company And if you're running organizations in business, he said, and that's why he insisted that win-win. So cooperation, win-win, and joint work. He said, everyone will win. Some may win less than others, but everyone wins all the same. So don't compare, because all of you are winners, right? Said, instead of trying to choke your competitor, expand the market, focus on the customer, find out what he wants, what he or she wants, bring out better product. Not only do you gain, everybody else gains. And so this was basically why we chose this as a topic. And competition, he said, was you keep getting better. Prelude, I tried to give a same kind of an example of how inside a company, if you're talking about two companies having attained something, all right, both of them got the so-called, say, great prize, but one spent some amount of money doing it, the other one spent another amount of money getting it. And then we say, okay, then this company spent lesser money doing that. Well, the next time you're faced with something else, then with a similar situation, then we say, we spent so much last time, we need to get better at what we did. We don't compare ourselves with someone else. And came there this topic of benchmarking. Now, I remember having learned about benchmarking. It is very different from a conventional comparison. All right. If you talk about a conventional comparison, you compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. But here you compare, yes, but you're not doing a conventional one. You go a best that exists, right? Not necessarily in my own industry. And I think that happened with Robert Camp, right, in Xerox, where he was trying to establish a distribution network for spare parts of the Xerox machines. And then when he did a comparison, he found that he had the best network. And he said, no, I'm still not happy with what I have. 7-8 months of doing that comparison, that he was just barking up the wrong tree. He said, wait, I need to look out for the best distribution network that exists, not necessarily for distribution of spare parts. And that's when he found the Czech company called Bata. Of course, they operate mainly out of and wide variety of shoes and colors and models, you name it. So he studied that, and then he adapted and adopted. He didn't copy. He adapted and adopted it to create one of the most amazing networks for spare parts. And then it occurred to him he can do this for every other. And for each process, he found the best network that exists. Recently in India, we had this particular example that I can give you. Was there's this private airline company here called Indigo Airlines, and they're the only ones posting some kind of a profit here in India. And you see what happened when the government of India, as usual, played a dirty trick on them. They said, yes, you may run a private airline, but if you're using the airports, you have to pay a rent for using the airports. We're using the airports for our own consumption, our own airlines. So if you have a private, you pay astronomically per hour. And so there was one airline company, which was the person was based out of my city here, where I live, Pune city. He started his airways, but he found in a year or so he was posting losses because of the sheer rent that he was paying. And so he decided to just shut down. He tried explaining to the government of India that this rent is too high for me. I can't operate. Meanwhile, there were 3-4 other people who started their airlines, and they explained to him, let's do this, let's go and request them to reduce. But he said, I would have none of it. And so he shut down his airline. The others, meanwhile, somehow managed to convince the government that it's not a level playing field. So the government of India came up with a solution. They said between 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., the rent will be, the full rate. But before 9 a.m. and after 9 p.m., the rent would be 1/4 what it is. And so they started having all their flights before 9 or after 9. And they're trying to, sort of optimize their costs. Now, in that, the turnaround time was going to decide whether they're going to be in a profit or no. So they decided to turn around from the time the flight lands, deplane passengers, onboard the next set of passengers, and then take off. That should be as less as possible, right? So they decided to compare themselves with other airlines, and they found they were the fastest. Then they said, no, let's do benchmarking. So they benchmarked the Formula One pit stop, which was the fastest turnaround time ever. It happens to be in seconds. They didn't compare, they studied that system and replicated it differently and started doing it. So that is completely different. I'm not talking about that kind of, there's no competition there. That's why when you compare, you tend to be as good or as bad as whom you compare yourself with. But when you benchmark, I believe that you can get better than the original because you're adapting and adapting to your own, to your own situation. You don't copy. So you learn the theory behind it. And that's what Deming was focused on, theory. I remember in one of the videos that Henry showed me, it was called Deming Speaks to European Executives. Somebody Deming was talking about cooperation, win-win, and competition and perils of competition. Somebody said, and he said, you can't compare, right? So he said that, what about benchmarking? Deming said, I never heard of it. So he said, but even the Japanese practice benchmarking. He said, I'm quite sure you're not explaining it to. No, I want to correct this gentleman. It's not a comparison. It's you look out for the best that exists and you understand the theory. And when you heard the word theory, Deming said, see, I told you. You can't copy it. You understand the theory of something, and then you can make it better than the original. So I think I made myself clear about meant by competition and having a competitor in terms of someone you can look up to, and everyone's good at what they do. We're all different. We're all good at something, right? I just took the example of Dr. M. I can never do what he does. He can't do what I do. But then when we get together, what he said here is a system, and that's what we call as synergy. It's not what you do individually; it's what you do together, right? If you break up the system into its constituents and start studying the components and constituents separately, and then say, okay, what they're doing together is this, you make a big mistake. That's not how a system. For example, if you take the case of a molecule of water, it's composed of hydrogen and oxygen. You can never study water by studying the properties of hydrogen separately and oxygen separately and say when you put them together, you get water. If you try doing that, you'll make a big mistake. Let's get to this. Hydrogen, highly inflammable gas, just feeds fire. But when you put them together, you get something that quenches fire. Explain. So no logical reasoning can bring this out. So they don't compete with each other. They are working together. It's the same thing when you talk about people, you talk about departments, you talk about sections, you talk about companies, including, right? So we say competition is, and he looked at it that way. And if you're looking at it that compete trying to outdo each other, that's not what he meant. I think I'm making myself very clear on this. And that's the turning point. Like I said, he used that as the turning point. We've seen here in India also how Suzuki and Toyota are working together and build at how they're operating in my country. They're not using the same thing outside. I mean, if they are, I'd like to know about it, where they're sharing the the outside design of their cars, but the inside remains primarily technology and the Suzuki technology, but the model of the car, they share their models among each other, right? So that's amazing. And they don't look at it. It's like the trees and the roots, right? So we get to see the trees, but we don't see the roots and the ground are connected, and they feed each other. So that's the kind of cooperation that he wanted. It's very differently because we've been brought up like this, looking at competing all the time and comparing. Actually, I won't say we get into this habit of comparing, and that's what we should not do. So, right, Dr. M, that was the beginning. I took some liberty and explained why we chose this type.
Yeah.
Questions at me one by one.
Yeah, so you answered most of the written questions. So this chapter that we do later is the written questions of those who have sent us this questions, and I'm going to take you for a flight from US to Netherlands to Australia.
Right.
Okay, so here we go, Mr. Motwani. This is what he asks. that is there a standard protocol that Deming suggested for benchmarking within direct competition across other business sectors, indirect competitors to help to improve the processes? The second question, how does one define special cause and common cause while benchmarking and competing within and across industry?
Okay, the first thing, I think Deming was dead against standard protocol. He was a great fan of standards, by the way. But standard protocol, he wanted everyone to have their own method. He loved to give the thinking. He said the method should be yours. And I think I've often repeated this. He was a guru in a true sense of the word. Guru helps you understand who you are, and then you discover who you are, and you do it your own way, because only you understand your situation, your context, right? And so how could he give you a method, right? And so he said you come up with your own method. He could just guide you, saying that if you're going the right direction or not. But I don't think he gave any standard protocol. I wouldn't do that. And benchmarking, I just explained to you. I would say it's more about understanding the theory behind a success or something that, and then adapting, adopting, and maybe in some cases even improving upon that theory. So that comes with sheer application of the theory again and again. It comes with whatever, and you can't do it alone. You need people across from maybe different industries to come together. Again, cooperation is the key. That's the only way we can do it. Not all of us have all the knowledge built in all of us, so we need everyone working together on this. I would say that yes, we need to adapt and adopt. If one person has, adopted and come up with a successful and had a successful journey defining what success is again, then you say, okay, what did you do to achieve that? And then you say, okay, I can't do this, but I can do this, so let me try this. I believe in the Deming Prize. That is what exactly happened. He had made it very clear that there could be more than one winner of the Deming Prize every year. You don't make a comparison. If you as long as you meet the basic protocols, some certain requirements, and you say, okay, here you are, congratulations, you got the Deming Prize. And those who haven't got the Deming Prize that year, they say, well, we need you to go to another level. We were expecting something else. It's not that they're doing something. If they're doing something wrong, of course they're there to correct that. But they're saying that don't do this to get the prize, do this to improve, right? And that's how things are. So that part about standardizing, I don't think there is any standard protocol. Again, I think I answered the second question also in the common and special cause, because you understand your own context. And in your context, I would look at it this way. If there is something without which the system can operate in some way, then I would call it as a special, right? Whereas a common cause is something that you cannot really eliminate. You can only act upon and maybe reduce its effect or increase its effect, as the case may be. But in a special, you may operate without that particular cause. All right, it may not cause much of a problem to your existing system under study, though I believe that special cause altogether, because a special cause for one system could be the common cause of another system. So if you eliminate a special cause here, you could destroy some other system which is connected to this system under study. And that's why you use the word optimize, which is the special cause continues to exist, but to the extent it does a system under study. So there could be something that we consider as harmful, something to the system under study, but it could be a common cause of another related, maybe unrelated system somewhere in your organization, maybe in the entire super system, so to say, and because the problem will show up again, and then you would think that, Walter Schuhart's method doesn't work. So, yeah, I hope I've answered that. I don't know if Ashok Motwani is there.
Yeah, we'll take it up in the interactive session. So let me take you to the next one.
Sure.
That's Colleen. She asks a question regarding the low process quality management in US. Are there cultural drivers at the root of this condition?
Oh boy, what do I say? I think after you read profound knowledge, you realize that when you have a situation, you never then ask the question, who did it? You ask the question, what happened? And then you start looking at things very differently. You look into the actual process, the theories, why things work, right? And I would say that could be the cultural driver. I don't know whether in the West or in the US you have this as much. So in India, wherever I try to consult and go in, I try to shake that off. The first thing, that don't ask the question, who was there? Ask the question, what happened? And I think that was Walter Schuhart's greatest contribution, because he said if you want a good quality output, you need a good quality process. Inspection does not give you quality. And that's how, when he invented the control chart 100 years ago, the focus shifted from the outcome to the process. In other words, he was saying, don't blame the person, blame the process, and understand the process and go into the process again. And that was the beginning. So I think that change which he brought in the paradigm shift is what, unfortunately, it's been 100 years and people are still looking at managing by the outcomes and not the processes. One thing I can talk of. So it's culture. If there's a culture of blaming people, then I can't say anything. Okay.
Yeah, we are still in US. So, okay, so this is Ryan Parker. Is Deming said that ranking system within the company introduces competition between people and diminishes cooperation? What role must the competition
Yes.
play for the overall improvement of the system? Is it focusing on competition within yourself or other ways?
Yeah, you compete. Now here what happens is everyone has a different way, or is good at something, right? Or has a different way of learning and a speed of learning. So different method of learning and different speed of learning. And the job of a manager, all right, of people, Deming said, is to understand the learning process of that person. All right. And then once when you understand the learning process of that person, then you put that person on the right job, and you'll have to stop that person from working. That he called joy in work. Joy in work was not some altruistic statement he was making that people should enjoy their work, go out and play a game, of tennis at your place of work. That's not what he meant. All right, because I've seen some rubbish in the name of joy in work, including in my own country. On YouTube, someone showed me a video, and I kid you not, of the people in the company doing a group dance before they start working in the morning, and they call that joy in work. Seriously? And then when they start working, they kill each other. So then let's forget about that joy in work. That's not what he meant. He said, understand the learning process of a person and then put that person on the right job. Now, this is difficult to do, right? So the easiest thing to do is to compare them and bring in a ranking system. How easy? Just wiggle out of it. Put the onus on that person and say, you work. No, it's your job. You make him work. And how do you make him work? You need to find out why he's not working in the first place. What if he's in the wrong job? What if she's in the wrong job? You've not even taken time out to study that guy or that lady, why they're facing this. That's where theory comes, and that's where people come, and that's where system comes in. That's where profound knowledge is. You don't have profound knowledge, you're dead, literally. All right. So when you're talking about that competition, if you start pitting one person against another inside your company, saying that this will bring out the best in the whole thing, rubbish. You're digging your own grave. There's a beginning of the end. So again, coming back to performance management, of course we need to manage. We need to let the person know where he is or where she is compared to where he or she was yesterday. Then people confuse this with promotions and salaries. Those are different things. Salary is a question of demand and supply. And if you're talking about promotion, it depends on, again, you say that to be at this role, you need to have a combination of education, experience, and then you decide that system. Don't link this with that. So I can tell you this firsthand. If I'm talking about this, I removed performance appraisal in my company. And believe me, when I announced it, people celebrated. They said, whoa, yay, because many of them said they were doing things just to get a better rating. They didn't even believe in what they were doing. And what do you say to that? Then somebody said, what did you do instead? Yeah, I said, I want you to replace one disease with another. We de-linked this. We said we need to understand how each person is doing every day. We have roles, responsibilities. We explain to them what we expect from them. Then we ask them what they expect from us. We come to a common ground and say, okay, here's what we need to do in this financial year or the next 3 years. I need you to be like this because we are looking to grow like this. And that's when we see, okay, the company grows, you grow. If we've attained what we're supposed to, we then say, here you go. You get your raise, you get your money, you get your position, you get whatever you want. And people have seen and say that some people don't work at all, and some people work very hard, distribute the incentive everywhere, common. But then, aren't you punishing those who actually uh, work harder than those who don't? I would say, fine. If you can make out the people who are not working and working, can you do the next most important thing? Try to find out why they are not working instead of just saying you are not working. I'll give you an instance here, all right, about this quality circle movement in Japan, right? Okay, I think there's one thing I'm talking to a very august audience here, so it must be knowing this. It's voluntary and it's informal. A quality circle is voluntary and informal, right? You see, when Duran went there in 1954, he taught them two major things. One was about cost of quality. Now, again, there's been a big misunderstanding when he started teaching this in America. They thought that cost. He said, no. I'm not taking, I'm just telling how to calculate that cost and using it as a shock treatment to get management's attention. You are losing so much of money because of bad quality. And he said, now you have to solve that problem. Basically, getting top management's attention, he used the tool to grab management's attention. Instead, people started looking at it as, okay, now we'll see how, using that in a very different tool, just waving the flag and things like this. That was it. The second thing which he taught the Japanese was the existence of what is called as a quality council, not a quality circle, a quality council. A quality council, he says, is a cross-functional and cross-hierarchical team that comes together to take up a quality. Inish said that the problem chooses the team does not choose the problem, right? So if you're faced with a situation, you come up with a cross-functional and cross-hierarchical group of people. And he called that a quality council. Now, these come together, take up a quality initiative, he said, to carry out quality improvement. And he said improvement are of two types. One, reactive improvement. The trigger for this is from the outside of either the company or the department. Somebody outside has, may I use the word, complained that we've got a problem, you got a problem. And so you come together to solve that problem. He called this as reactive improvement. The second one he said was proactive improvement. Nobody, the triggers from within yourself. I want to take the performance of this process or this system under study to a higher level. So I'm going to come together. So that's proactive improvement, which he called as continuous improvement, right? So he said it's a quality council. Now, the council comes together. They take up the problem under study and they solve the problem, right? Using whatever methods, whether it's Plan, Do, Study, Act and all of the tools and what have you. But it's a project, it's a proper formal team that has been selected. And I said that the problem selects the team, right? Now, when the problem has been, now when I say solved, it's a relative term. For example, if I'm dealing with something, the tune of restrictions or something, and you say, I want this to disappear, and that's when I consider the problem solved. In some cases, you can't make it zero. So from whatever it was, I bring it down to a manageable level. Fine, that's how you go. You go step by step. So if you attain that and you say, okay, problem, what we decided to do, we've attained it, then the quality council is dissolved. They go back to their respective functions and hierarchies. And the next quality council takes their place to take up the next quality initiative, which means the concept of a quality council is permanent. Quality council itself is not permanent. I hope this part, I don't know if that made sense. That there should be a quality council inside a company at any given point in time, but not the same guys. You have to have the next step. Why did Duran do this? He said that everyone in the company must understand the power of these methods. They must know that these methods work. Now, once what happened, this was established in 1954. Between 1954 and 1962, in those 8 years, throughout Japanese industry, this was implemented like labor problems, by the way. That was also taken up by this gentleman, Ishikawa. He tackled it using these methods. And in those 8 years, there was not a single person in Japanese industry who had not served on a quality council at least once. There were many who served on quality councils more than once, some of them even 3 or 4 times. And here's where he saw that quality had entered into the bloodstream of the industry in Japan. They started having magazines, QC and the Foreman, QC and this, QC and that, radio programs. And of course, once in a year, they used to have the Deming Prize ceremony, primetime television. Now came the next set. Now, when Ishikawa saw this happen, he wanted to take level, and he said, now here's what he learned. When the quality council has solved the quality problem or has, well, come up with some improved measure of process or improved process, they dissolve and go back to their respective functions and hierarchies. Now you have to take some action to sustain that improvement that you have attained. And then what they used to do is, in an informal manner, they used to pass on the learnings that they got, carrying out that project to the team within the same function and hierarchy they came from. This informal team came to be known as a quality circle. So quality circle was set up a quality initiative, not to initiate it. The initiation came from quality council, not the circle. The circle came later. So it's a voluntary thing. It's an informal thing. The quality circle is informal, right? So this was 1962, right? When you're talking about quality circle movement, getting everyone together, okay, in establishing all of this. Now here is where, let me put this very clearly, where I started reading about what the quality circle movement has become in Japan today. They talk about circles operating like a mini company. Now, this is the informal group within the same function or hierarchy, not a council which is cross-function and cross-hierarchy. This is the same function, same hierarchy, informal group of people coming together, right? And they're operating, they're saying this area is my company. Now, each person assumes a role. One person is the so-called CEO of their company. One person is the financial manager of the company. One person is the HR manager. I'm just talking, if you know what I mean. They assume certain roles. They play roles, right? Now, they don't assume those roles based on their abilities, because every 3 or 4 months, they switch their roles. The person who used to be the CEO now becomes finance, the finance becomes someone else. What is this done for? They are introducing the workforce in an informal way. They're getting them through and giving them training of being a manager at different levels. That means if you are now a finance manager in your so-called quality circle mini company, you go to the actual finance person in your company and learn finance in an informal manner. So they're introducing them to the managerial process in a very fun way. Now, in that, if you take the case here, I saw one particular sheet where they wrote about attendance records. All right. Now, this was, I just said, informal, voluntary. Then why would you need an attendance record? Why would you want to have an attendance record when this whole quality circle meetings that they have are informal? I mean, it got me puzzled, but I will share with you my father's experience in Japan. Perhaps you'll be able to then connect to what I'm saying. I told you he was in Japan in 1964, and 62 is when this quality circle movement started. All right. Now, he was there on what is called as Asian Overseas Technical Scholarship, AOTS. It still exists. They have these short-term courses, 3, 6, 9, and 1 year. Okay. He was for the 6-month course. So it's for 6 months in Japan. And from what I remember him saying, from 9 to around 10 or 12 o'clock in the first half of the day, they had classroom lectures. But in the second half of the day, he had to work in a company, and that's electric. So on the first day, of course, when he reported to Showa Electric, he didn't know much of Japanese at all, because by the time 6 months later, he could crack jokes in Japanese and sing songs in Japanese. But at that time, he had no idea, right? So when he went there, they said, called Quality Circle, would you like to be a part of it? Because it's supposed to be voluntary. So he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they said, okay, why don't you talk to your teacher, your sensei at your class, and then clear your doubts and you can tell us tomorrow. So the next day in class, my father asked the teacher on Quality Circle, and his teacher said, go ahead, become a part of it. You learn a hell of a lot. That's good. So the next day he told them, yes, I'll be a part of it. Then he was introduced to everybody. Now on the third day, his work began. He was supposed to do soldering because they were making, Shaw Electric made these PCB, the boards for radio, transistor radios and television set. That soldering was the dip solder. I think for those who know this, by capillary action, the solder gets attracted. Well, that's the engineering bit. So he was taught by that supervisor to hold down the board to the capillary action, and here it is. This is what it looks like, and he demonstrated to him at least 10 or 12 times. He said, now you do it. And he helped my father do it around 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And then when that was okay, he said, okay, now you understood this? Fine. Now the important bit. If you hold it down too hard or for too long, there's a superficial crack that appears here. But over a period of time can cause a long-term impact on the performance of the transistor radio or whatever you're making. So we call it as a reject, even though the customer will never see it. So if there is a reject, you have to pull this cord. There's a cord there, you have to pull it. All right. And when you pull the cord, there's a big siren that went off, and when the red lamp started, so the whole damn company knew that there was a fault. There's something that was, the person made a mistake here. Fine. So my father then started doing his work. This man just taught him that, and he went away. I think the third or fourth board he made had that crack. Now, there's a very Indian joke, and I think Dr. Indian in him got up, saying that should I report this particular defect or no? So what will this man think of me? That he's the Indian man. In a third job, he made a defect. What a useless guy is, Indians, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I don't know what got into me. I just pulled the cord. And he pulled the cord, that whole company looked at him, but then they went back to doing their work. They just looked in that direction, and nobody said anything. The supervisor came and said, what happened? And my father showed him. He just put it aside, very coolly demonstrated again to him what he was supposed to do. And then again, he made my father make around 5 or 10 and said, now you got it? Oh, wait, say you're putting high pressure, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, went away. Now, for the next hour, 2 hours, everything went fine. After 2 hours was the tea break. And then they sat around the table to have the tea break. And this was where the supervisor got up and started talking in Japanese. Now, this was a quality circle. It was an informal group, sitting around the table. And he started talking. Now, my father realized I was talking about him because they could never pronounce my father's name correctly. They say la instead of ra. So he was called Lady San. Reddie San became Lady San. So Lady San, something lady. He said, I knew they were talking about it. He said, I was so embarrassed. I just kept staring at my cup of tea. Then when I looked up, staring at that man and then looking at him and smiling. And then after that man stopped what he was saying, they all clapped, looking at my father. And my father was all bewildered. Why the hell are they clapping? What are they clapping for? And then he asked this supervisor later on, why did you tell them that I made a mistake, that I made a crack? He said, yeah, I did. Then why were they clapping? He says, you pulled the cord. So what do you mean? He says, see, we have a saying here. We have a thinking here in Japan. What? If after I have explained to a person 10 times how to do something and the person still makes a mistake, then there is something wrong in the way I explained it. Now, if you apply the same thinking to having attendance records in a quality circle, why do you think they would have this in Japan, attendance records in a quality circle? Let me put it the other way around. What do you think they do in the record if they discover that there is one man, the quality circle meetings? What do you think they'll do? Yeah.
To make the purpose much more serious in real quality circle. Why they formed the circle, so they wanted to understand if
Let's look
somebody
at it again. Let's understand. Maybe I asked the question wrong. If I say here that that they found in the records, attendance records, there's this one guy who's been missing meetings all the time.
Okay.
What they would do to this guy? What would they do? You just heard my father's story. What do you think they would do?
They should see that is there any problem for him attending at that time. Something.
It's not about what are we doing wrong. Are we making you feel unwelcome here? If he is doing wrong, it's what we are doing wrong. If you find in your company, if you're saying that somebody is not contributing, right? You need to find out why is that person not contributing. Does that person feel unwelcome in this team, in our team here? If we are a system, then this is the only way. So that kind of competition has to go away. I hope I'm making myself clear here.
Yeah. So,
And I think the ranking system kills it.
So Balaji sir, I'll quickly go through because there are there are other questions, and if there is something that you've already explained, you could skip those and go forward.
Yes.
So this we have covered.
This is Pauline. We have covered this. Okay. Anything else?
This is the second question. Deming said that the secret is cooperation between the component towards the aim of the organization. I think you covered this.
Yeah.
So then let's go down. There's Patrick. I'm taking you to Australia now.
Okay.
So how does the often heard mantra of losing is not an option conflict with Deming's holistic some will say utopic view of competition? I think Balaji, what we will do is we will take this up in the open session so that we can discuss this.
Cool.
And we go to I'm taking you back towards US, but we'll go to Netherlands now. This is Arnold. He's in the health sector, and he asks his quotes Sir Francis Clayton about benchmarking. You covered this in your talk. What is your view on the statement that you have? How can we effectively benchmark? You have talked about it. Arnold's book is there. On health sector, he said, I suggest people in the health sector to primarily benchmark, compare against themselves. I think you covered that in a
good idea.
He asked you.
I think you're on the right track, but only like to see how you do it actually. It would be fun to see this. The thought processes, right?
Yeah.
We'd like to see what action. Yeah.
Then he has asked you, what would
examples.
you, Balaji, say to somebody in highest percentile violence sector population, right? Meaning being the best in the class is still not very good. I mean, I think you covered that.
I would still say by what measure? What are you measuring?
Okay, so we end this and we move into the most interesting thing of talking to the invitees, and go ahead and I'll stop sharing. It's all yours. Go ahead.
It's all the invitees. Invitees, shoot.
Not Dr. M. Don't shoot.
Not Dr. M? Oh, dear.
Go ahead. And Raj.
Eric's been posting some lovely notes. So I think Eric's been posting some lovely notes. I can see
there
that.
are no questions, but there are some posts from others during this.
Yeah.
So I think we leave it to the questions and then we read the notes. If there are no questions, then in between we read the notes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We'll wait for anyone to ask questions, or I will go to the notes here.
Wow. Okay. SMED. Yeah. Okay. Eric, I think that was quite the other way around, right? Because Shigo, I think it was Shigo They did because they wanted, so they wanted to move towards.
Yeah, when you
okay.
you shared about the
So Eric,
importance. When you shared about the importance of a method, I
Right.
think there's several of these things that people turn into tools that really, if we go back and understand what the method is, we can apply it to much. And that was my example of using that approach to the annual inventory process for one company.
Okay.
When we compared about the airlines, how they were comparing themselves or trying to understand what's happening in the Formula One cars situation.
Right.
How they had posted this, yes.
Yeah, so you can't obviously do something in 2 seconds or something. You can't clean the aeroplane in 2 seconds, but you can definitely see what they're doing.
Yeah, so the concept is used like this, man. Yeah,
correct. So you know what? I had read a very interesting magazine. I don't know that it's available abroad. It's called Reader's Digest.
Yes.
You know about that? Okay.
Yeah.
And Reader's Digest, carries these experiences of people who sometimes they made it, sometimes they're not. And there was this very interesting thing about how man always has been. He created the camera, and that's how he created the helicopter and things like that. And there was an instance of how this one gentleman was saying, I was flying a 2-seater aircraft, which got caught in a twister, a tornado. And he said, I was trying to fly out of it. And the more I was trying to fly, and he saw there was an eagle that got caught in the twister along with him. And then he saw as the eagle was also flapping its wings wildly and trying to fly out. And he's doing it. And suddenly the eagle just stopped flying and withdrew its wings. Right? Just stopped. Decided to follow the eagle and turned off the engine. He said the eagle started falling in the twist, and so did he. They both started falling. And he said it came to a point where the eagle suddenly decided to flap his wings and flew out of the tornado. He said, I turned on my aeroplane and I flew out of the tornado. And so he wrote about this, and he then, he gave it a body, but he gave the religious twist that, the Lord came to me in the form of an eagle. So, and that's how the article ended. But then somebody wrote back in the letters to the editor in the next month saying that, no, this man was actually, the eagle nature, and an eagle could make out what was happening. So it decided not to fight it, but go along with it. And so it fell using that gravity took over. So it started falling down to a point in the twister because the highest force is at the top and not at the center. So he reached down and then he could fly out. When he got back his strength. And that's exactly what the aeroplane. So he said he was just benchmarking and not really, the Lord and things like that. So I think as humans, we always benchmarked against nature. So if they can do it, so can we.
Yeah, there's a whole field, biomimicry, correct?
That's right, biomimicry.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting now that you have the thing that's coming in right now. Synbio, they're calling it, trying to mimic biological processes like photosynthesis and doing it in a synthetic way. So,
in that moment, also reminds me of a concept called "what you resist persists."
Yeah,
and sometimes if it's the resistance, for instance, somebody's resisting change in our organization instead of fighting against it. Maybe there's some other concept like you asked about. Well, why isn't this person showing up to the quality council? Instead of resisting his absence, well, right. let's quit resisting it and join it.
So yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I feel Eric's comments about this like a mouse trap, and even some very experienced mentors who teach the related method to the organization executives. But in many cases, we met the barriers. It means their egos, or we failed to align where we came from, to let them understand where we came from, to help them. So why is the top management commitment? If we don't have their commitment, no matter how many operations works, that's no use. Same as we have a lot of lean tools stuck at the corner, but they never use it. The second is that there's another observation I observed to the local management. Sometimes even we put the simple truth on the table, tell them just follow 1, 2, 3 steps to do so, and you will save your cost, you will improve the customer experience. But because they don't understand where you came from, sometimes they think you are the opposite of them. And over the time, this back and forth, even that one also involve ourselves in these kind of illusions. So that's why I call that one like a mouse trap. Yeah. So to capture us. But if we want to wave that, in the morning before this meeting, I watched the another video who learned from the Golden Smith. He said he learned from Peter Direct, and he said we should have a sales mindset to those executives on the top. It means they are the decision maker. By the end of the day, if we want to make the difference, pursue them or influencing them to align with us. So they are our customer and we are the seller, and we should sell our idea to them in a better way to allow them a way to buy our idea in. And the second thing is this double direct. If someone in the senior leadership is a decision maker, hold that authority to make the difference. In fact, a lot of another trip is that they are the good person. They really want to make the difference, but the trap to them is that they try to explain where they came from or why they say no. Or something like that. But that's also costs a lot of their energy to let them burn out, even they are the good person. So that Golden Smith said, if they are the decision maker to make the tough decision, partially who don't need to explain to everyone to achieve everyone's understanding. So these two directions may close the ego boosting related gaps, and 3 years ago during the pandemic, I learned one of the influencing or impact model. There is a very impressive sentence I want to share to the community. They said influence start from you, but quickly it became about them, and together you do the great work. So it means if we really no matter they are our customer or client, or we really want to change something, make some difference, we have to have that kind of ability to adopt them instead of being the opposite of them. Yeah.
Yeah. You said that getting the selling your idea to the executives, that was basically the idea why the concept of cost of quality was invented, because they understand. He said they understand the language of money, so explain. But instead of that means it was a means to an end, but people are using it as an end in itself. That is reduce cost, but how? Something wrong. So there are more people engaged in computing the cost of quality than actually trying to want to reduce it. Much like what Deming said, there are more people measuring productivity than actually improving it. Right. Yeah, you share a file. Yeah, Eric, you've done that.
Yeah, we were in a meeting one time with Dr. Deming, and
Right.
I was working on an account on the General Motors account for EDS people. Our manager asked him if there's hope for General Motors, and his response was, "Well, sometimes you just have to wait for people to die." And what I think he was talking about was there was a quote I ran across by Max Planck that said, "A new scientific truth to opponents, but by making them see the light, but rather its opponents eventually die, and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it." So sometimes there may be a generation of leaders who are just not going to get it, and I think that was Dr. Deming's point. Sometimes they aren't going to change, and we just have leaders that have the capacity to see it and understand it. You know, I think that goes along with the psychology of individuals. We learn and see some things, and we want to sustain our worldviews. And in a leadership position, you want to sustain it so strongly. What you thought got you there, that it's almost existential to be changing some of the things that we're asking our leaders to change. Like they feel it's a personal threat to them. And so it's very dangerous for them to say, "Oh, let's do this differently."
Yeah, if you've seen the New Economics, there's something that he started off unfinished. What are the attributes of a leader? Then he came up with 14 of them in the New Economics. And there he talks about, in that when he wrote those 14, because I think one of the books that later on came out, a compendium, 14 Principles of Leadership is what he called it, which he funnily skipped the first two, so to say, opening sentences which he given out of the crisis, which is much more important. So what I've done is I've just combined those and put it into this along with the 14, and they now read like 17 principles of leadership. What I've done, I've put all this all together in one kind of a big file. First, of course, his 14 points, and then you have his deadly diseases, and then you have his 16 obstacles. He outlined 16 of them. Then you had losses, the 9 heavy losses, which he kind of rephrased basically the deadly diseases in a very different way. And then finally, these principles of leadership. So I put them all together in one huge big document, calling it the Complete Works of WED, and sent it to the Deming Institute. And Kevin has gone through them, and he said he's trying to work out something with the copyright issues and things like this before he finally puts it up on the Deming website. But it's all in one. It's all in one place, so to say. But those 14, those principles of leadership are incredible, and much of what you're just saying here that you need to condemn his entirety before judging. And he says, "Don't judge people. They shut up."
They do.
He says that. And that's the thing about comparison, right? That's the thing about performance appraisal. You are comparing, and nobody likes being judged. So you just tell them that you need to work on this and things like that. Well, that's about. Yes, Dr. M, you're all smug.
No, I got enough time, and Dr. M's time is no constraint for me. So, because I'm going to record everything, because it's a digital library in making. Where do I get Eric and Lani and Balaji together, August, to discuss all this? And as a matter of fact, Balaji, sir, you have increased my workload. Because what I'm going to do, yeah, you have, and I'll tell you why. Because when you gave your father's example and you said whatever you said, now I'm looking at my plight, and I'm going to write to 60 of my invitees and going to ask them that I invited you. You did not turn up. So please tell me, where did I go wrong and how do I improve? Why is there anything wrong? I'm just following your principles, Balaji, and you are my mentor on.
No, that's a good way to put it. Yes. It's a good way
Yeah,
to put it.
I want to write to each one of them because I sent them individual emails, right? So I'm going to individually say, I missed you, but then you let me know where did I go wrong? Maybe the timing was wrong, maybe something, or maybe everybody knows what, I mean, you told me that Deming wrote 2 books, but then the number of versions of Deming that I saw is much more than probably Deming himself realized that.
Yeah, and he encouraged that. He encouraged it. To think that Ed Baker has written just around what 6-7 years ago, that book got released, The Symphony of Profound Knowledge.
Oh, that's a wonderful book. Yep.
Oh, brilliant! 12 Days to Deming. What happened when I was really surprised at what Henry did, and someday I'll explain to you. I think Dr. M knows that. That when I sent something I had written on profound knowledge to him, and when Henry put it together, he called it as 4 preludes and a coda. Time Ed Baker's book came out, The Symphony of Profound Knowledge, and he said, Balaji, look at the it's such a coincidence, and we did it the same year. We released it. What was that? May 2017, and his book came in December 2017. And it was movement 1, movement 2, movement 3, and then movement 4. So the symphony in 4 parts.
Why is Lani quiet? Lani is not normally quiet. El Paso, come on.
I'm thinking, Dr. M. I'm thinking, Doc. No, I do have a question. Dr. Deming was continually revising his materials. Even his 14 points, he changed over time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and he wrote 2 versions of the New Economics were published. They don't differ very much, but there are some distinctions. But the most recent thing he wrote in the New Economics, and he wrote one statement that just has blown me out of the water. And that is, he said very distinctly, and he said it different than he said other things. He said some controversial things. Like he said something about experience is not very meaningful, but he put it in context. And then he talked about experience and tying it with theory. But in the New Economics, he said, we now know that competition is destructive. Period. End of discussion. There is almost nothing that modifies it or put it in any other context. And that's grossly contradictory to many other things that he said. For example, his first point, which he never modified, is kind of let's wake up and get smart and become competitive. And so there he's talking about competitive. It's a very admirable thing to attain. And then in the New Economics, he says competition is destructive. And he doesn't modify it. Later he says competition should be reserved for introduction of new products or something like that. But one sentence, and you really got to struggle to find that. I took the New Economics and I searched the words competition and cooperation. And I don't know if he died before he had a chance to put it in context, because he actually died before the last copy of the last version of the New Economics was issued. But I was piqued by your interest talking about competition and collaboration.
Yeah, I think he meant it in a context. I think he made it clear in that video, Deming of America, where he said that in a game, we always knew there was going to be one winner. And he said, but in business and education, there can be more winners. And that's what he meant by that. And if you see what he said, they said adversarial competition is a solution. It is not. So I would look at it in that context. It's not that he said competition will have a role. That's why I told you it took me 5 years to figure out what he was trying to say. When he said, I mean, I had the same thinking, about what did he mean by that? So is there going to be no competition at all? Everyone is together, but then why do we play a game? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And then he said,
what's the name of that video, Balaji?
The Deming of America.
Do you know when it was published?
19. It's by a lady, Priscilla Petty, and
Priscilla Petty? Oh, okay. I
yeah.
have that video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see that he's spoken about competition. He says that it's infinite market. This is when you look at cooperation, you are making the market becomes infinite versus finite, where each one is trying to have a bigger share of the market rather than trying to expand the market.
Well, the thing that
So-
really intrigued me about that was continually modifying what he did and said, and when people would take him to task on modifying it, his standard line was, "I'm never going to apologize for learning," which
That's
I
right.
thought was great. But
Mhm.
but that was his last statement on competition.
Mhm.
And there is in there, I can't find an ounce of context that puts that in context.
Hmm.
And so
No, I think that there was a context, Lonnie. You need to look deeper. It was there were a lot of things he was looking at. He was looking at the way economists
specifically,
have.
where do I look? Tell me.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, he was looking the economic thing, that the thing about survival of the fittest, etc., etc. And he said there's no such thing. And he said that even if you look the case of how economists said that led us down the wrong road, adversarial competition. So that's not the solution. And so it's played its role. I think if you look in the notes to the videos that General Motors came out with after his passing, the 4-day seminar were being presented in video cassettes. And I think there were around 8 or 9 video cassettes, and it came along with a notebook. Notes.
I helped
for-
edit that. I was part of the team that went through the four. They gave us a set of 4-day seminars, and we all pulled together different segments of it. So I was part of the team that helped put that together.
There you go. So,
Yeah.
so Lonnie, you have your answer here. He's spoken about this very well in that. The other point he's spoken very well about, which cleared a lot of stuff, was about point number 3, inspection, where he said to cease dependence on mass inspection, but that he ends by saying that you use inspection intelligently. You can never remove inspection altogether. You can't be in the dark about what's happening in your process. So you need to be at least alerted about what's going on. And if you're using inspection to notify you that things are okay rather than sorting bad from good, then you're on the right track.
Yeah, I think that the tandem on that is the cease dependence upon inspection for quality.
Don't depend on inspection.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't say don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And people misunderstood that.
Yeah. So I
that's
posted
where-
2 quotes from the New Economics that I think say some things about competition is destructive.
Yeah.
But the second one actually provides the context where he says, competition as we see now is destructive, but there's a context within which he refers
he
to
has
that.
said that.
Yeah, he says we need to work together as a system. So there's elements of what he's saying competition does, which is one of the things it does is destroy a system.
Yeah. And I think it's the context of the system itself. And you have to look at it that way. That's why I said that within you have the synergistic relationships, and you can't even measure them. It's what they do together. It's not what they do separately. You don't sit and compete with somebody else. It's just like here. I mean, like even in this system, like I said, I mean, Lonnie is good at something. Eric's good at something. Dr. M. Each one of us, is good at something. It's what we do together. If we meet more often and interact, and what comes out of this, that's more important than who is a better speaker. That's a stupid way of looking at it. That's not how we look at things. So, yeah,
Well, I don't want to hijack the discussion here, but Eric, I'd love to chat with you offline, Balaji too, because I see that different, and I think Dr. Deming saw it different also. But another day.
Mhm.
No, we have the whole day. Lani.
Well, I think what Dr. Deming is saying is competition within the system you're currently interested in.
Yes,
The system
understudy.
itself is infinite. The system is completely open. And he told them the system, your system is Japan. And so his message was Japanese companies don't compete with Japanese world. Okay. Because you've got to be pretty blind to not see that he saw how the competition of the Japanese with the rest of the world in the automobile industry made the entire automobile industry of the world. And it wasn't because they cooperated. It was because they competed. The Japanese competed with everybody and they made the British cars better and they made the American cars better. Now there were losers in there. Clear there were losers.
Yeah.
Not everybody won. I mean, nobody has a Studebaker car. Nobody has a Pontiac anymore. All those companies went off. But I think his message was that he talked about winning was when the entire system gained.
Mm.
And I don't think the entire system can gain. I think that's an impossibility. Okay. Just like Packer, some kid was planning on going to college because his dad was an executive and all of a sudden he's fired. Now he can't, so he goes to a junior college. That's not winning. Okay. But I think if you draw a circle around all the people who are associated with that, the world is a better place. The greater system is better. So I think that's what he's saying about competition. He doesn't say it very clearly, but that's what I interpret. And very loosely from what he said. I just think that's a reality that we deal with. So when he said we now know competition, we now know is destructive, and didn't put it in context, I just think if
he was
if he'd
speaking.
lived another couple of years, he would have changed that statement. Because in it
No,
itself,
he would have given us
not
something more
true.
with that. Let me put it that way.
Pardon?
He would have given us something more.
Yeah, I agree with
He
you.
would have
I
given us
agree with
something
you.
more.
Yeah. And Lonnie, I think you're on the right track, Lonnie, where expand the boundaries of the system you're working with. But he says it gets
Yes.
more difficult to manage that system as you get bigger and bigger.
So you have to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah.
I think he says
But
that in the systems chapter
I
too.
don't know if you have to draw a line somewhere, but if you don't.
Well, if we go back to one of the things he said is there's no system without an aim. So it's
That's
critical to use the aim as the definition of the boundary of the system.
Yeah, exactly.
He said that. He has said that.
Yeah.
The aim.
And in fact, in the Deming Library on Education, they asked him a question, well, tell us about education. He said, well, the system of education. And his response is, well, what would be the aim of that system? So his first response around defining a system is, what would be the aim? And I think that's the key when we look at what we're talking about when we decide competition within the system around which we're trying to achieve a certain aim. What is the aim of the system we're trying to accomplish? And then competing within that is destructive.
Yeah.
Like
I think about education, I think he wrote about that in Out of the Crisis, right? Where he said, what is the job of a teacher?
Yeah. Well, people who are far deeper involved in systems thinking than Deming, people like Donella Meadows and Jay Forrester, Peter Senge, they universally use the word purpose. A system has a purpose. And I really don't think functionally there's any difference between what Dr. Deming says a system has a main aim and a system has a purpose. I just think
purpose. So when I teach it, I say aim into brackets
thing.
And purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
So purpose gives you the reason why you exist, and aim is the direction in which the system is headed. So when I explain that to my students, I say aim and into brackets, always right there, and purpose.
Excellent.
Because I think it was in the New Economics where he told them that the system you're working with is Japan.
Yeah, Japan must see itself as a system.
Mhm. And consequently, you see things like the Japanese Union of Scientists and Engineers standardized all kinds of things, management training, statistics. They standardized statistics before Deming got there, and they share that across, share it quite as much as they advertise that they share it. Because
Yes.
for example, I've worked with the Toyota Suppliers Network and the Honda Suppliers Network, and in the Honda Suppliers Network, those suppliers can't also supply Toyota. They can only be in the network if they. So it's not kind of like the textbook answer, but it's pretty close, and
Mhm.
a whole lot better than what we do in the United States, for sure.
Yes.
Well, so that's
guess
that then, Dr. M.
No, I got the whole day. I'm not going to keep anything for the next day. Lani, because I'm getting this recorded and it's going to be in the digital library. Why should only Deming have the library? Even Dr. M can have a library who is accessible by everybody.
That's
Augusto,
right.
can we hear you? Augusto?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of learnings from this discussion. My what is popping out of my head is about the topic of the competition. I believe what is my biggest takeaway is that competition is, when competition is destructive, you are competing against the wrong competitor.
Mhm.
So you need to find the right competition to make it not destructive, but you need to have something that tells you that you are in a destructive way. So when you hijack your people, you maybe start facing this kind of situations like the Stockholm syndrome,
Hmm.
when also so people, even they are against their hijackers. We can make that comparison to the managers. They say yes, but they say just yes, just to the not to aim to the right
Mhm.
purpose. Yeah, that's maybe the biggest takeaway that I have from this discussion.
Great. Does the host have the last say? I'm not going to say namaste to say, I mean, I'd love to hear all of you all. One of the best things is about English language is the prepositions that we use is with and against and all this. So as a Gemba guy, since I'm dedicating this to Sensei Masaki Mai, is lean working with time or we lean working against time? That's not right. I'm sorry. It's not a question to anybody. To me, it's both. When you say lean working with time, is that we adopt technologies, etc. We keep in pace because lean is evolutionary in nature. So we work with time, as in what is happening around the world. Against time is what we do in the Gamba. Like Sir said about SMED, we try to, instead of a single digit minute, you have even one touch exchange of dice. So we can use, and Lani is pretty good. He calls the people who play around with words as wordsmiths. Am I right, Lani?
Yes.
You coined it, and I learned it. You got blacksmith, goldsmith, and the wordsmith, right? So we can play around with all this. Thank you very much for being here, and I keep up my promise. I'm going to write to each single one of them of where did the system, or how do I improve the system? That's what I always ask. Okay. Namaste, and thank you very much for being there
Thank
for
you.
us.
Thank you, Balaji. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Balaji.
Thank you,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, Balaji. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye.
Right.